Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind, your encouragement Friday session. For job seekers, we are so delighted to have you here. My name is Shira Lotzar. I am a higher purpose champion. I am all about helping job seekers and employer find their mutual connections together. And in that vein, I'm an association recruiter. I do career coaching, resume writing, LinkedIn networking, and so forth. I'm also the co-founder and volunteer of boomerworks.org. We are a community service helping professionals age 50 plus to re-career into self-employment. We offer free educational programs. Check us out at boomerworks.org. So today we have a few of our career experts with us. We have Corliss Jackson, who's an expert in federal government resumes. Hello, Corliss. We have Vern Schellinger, who's the maestro of networking and relationship building. And we have Rick Webb, who is all things recruiting for the government contracting sector. Okay, so today, as per usual, we are going to start with our 10-minute breakout session. And in that session, you want to identify your group's top questions. Please assign a scribe to capture the questions and make sure to post all your questions in the chat room once you get back from the meeting. So remember, do not post them in the chat room. In your breakout room, make sure to wait until you're back in the main room so everybody can see it. While you're in that room, feel free to share any best practices from your job search, and do make sure that everybody has equal time to share. Next, we will come back, of course, for our group discussion. Please remain muted when you're in the chat room so that the experts have enough time to answer your questions. And if there are any unanswered questions from your chat box, then feel free to email me at shira@purposefulhire.com. At 10:05, we will offer our standard 10-minute speed networking. So as you know, these last several weeks, we've bounced back and forth from the breakout room, which is what we're going to do today. And last week we did the kind of round robin with all the Hollywood squares. We'll do that hopefully next week. And while you're in your breakout session, in that one, you want to share your career goals, the kind of job you're looking for, and really allow people to help you, get some job leads. Keep in touch with our Power Networking spreadsheet. We have a recording of the Q&A that'll be posted here on my website, and then check out our job search resources page, where we've got a bunch of books and apps and articles and so forth. And I will post all of these links in the chat box when we get back. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get into our breakout rooms. So let's go ahead and get you guys in there. One second. And all right, so you should have your blue join button. Go ahead and hit your button, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. And for those watching the recording, fast forward about 9.5 minutes, and we'll see you back. We've missed you so much, dot, dot, dot. Of course, we would love to have you jump back in, exclamation point. In fact, comma, I was Hey, Michelle, you're on mute. Oh, hey, did you find your dog?
Yes. She's, getting sneakier and sneakier.
Aw.
She kind of like waits by the door.
And then she jumps out. Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I open it, she's out. And I didn't realize, because the garage door, like it was to the garage, so the garage door was closing. So I'm like, oh, she's maybe sniffing something around. And then
No, then
well,
boom.
I realized she's gotten a bit further than that.
Gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're finishing up breakout rooms. So, hey, Meredith, Michelle, Scott, I'll just go ahead and pop you in just for a little minute there if you want to.
Thank you.
Want to go in there?
Good morning.
Good morning. I'll pop you in as well, Michelle. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a good little networking session there. So whoever the scribe was, feel free to go ahead and start popping your questions into the chat box. We will start aggregating them. In the meantime, I had a couple of advanced questions in the questionnaire. So I'll just start. The first question is, what is appropriate attire for men for a web interview, for all of our Zoom interviews? Interestingly enough, I'm actually conducting executive director search right now, and like actually yesterday, today, and tomorrow are the search committee interviews. So I've literally been advising my male candidates on what to wear. So that's really good timing. So here's the situation. In general, just like with any interview, go professional, right? So a suit, jacket, absolutely. I would say 99% of the time. The 1% would be if you happen to know, or especially if the interviewer actually says to you, hey, we're a little more casual, feel free not to wear a suit. If they prompt you that way, fine. But otherwise, assume, highest level professionalism, just like you would. And that goes for women too, by the way. I know this wasn't a woman question, but for women, because often women will wear things that, let me be a dress, right, or whatever, where if you were in person, they could see that you're wearing a dress, but in Zoom, all they see is this. I would actually recommend that you wear a suit jacket as well, because it kind of squares off your shoulders and it kind of gives you that nice little professional look. So that's a tip for women. But for men, yeah, so suit jacket, it could be, black, maybe not as much, just because it's a little bit stark. Navy blue, gray is fine. Look at your complexion. Look at what's behind your walls. Yesterday, the individual I'll just give you a little case study. I was prepping this gentleman, and his walls were kind of white, right? But it was a little bit stark. And so I said, you know what? Chris, how about you go ahead, wear your suit jacket, but let's look at your tie color. So let's have your tie color like pop a little bit, right? So kind of gave him a little bit of breath of fresh air. The other thing I did was I had him in his background, we changed it up so that the picture behind him had a little bit of color as well. So kind of like, and plus he had a very, very mild personality. So I wanted him to like kind of come out a little bit. So a little color behind him, a little color in his tie. It all kind of helped make him a little more vibrant. So you got to have to actually put the whole thing together. It's not just about what you're wearing, it's also what's going on behind you. So there's a little tip for you. Any of my experts, Rick, you want to share?
Yeah, the only reason I wanted to say something, because in our group, there was a comment that came up about lighting. And I was saying that, you really want to adjust your lighting, because the more light you have, the older you look. And so I was like, yeah, I usually, like, I have 2 lights in this room, but I only turn on one because it smooths out my skin is, has a few wrinkles in it, but with the lighting, down a little bit, it actually looks better, I think.
That's so interesting. Yeah, so I guess that's real. And I wish Kiki was on here today because she's our Zoom expert. I think it's probably a balance, right? Because like to your point, a little bit of shading is good. On the other hand, you do want your face to be lit. So there was another individual I was coaching yesterday for his interview, and he just wasn't able to have any light in front of him, which made his whole face in shadow. And there was nothing he could do about it. But really, really, you want to make sure, Kiki always talks about this, have 3-point lighting on your right, on your left, and in front of you, so that your face actually has some brightness. But Rick, to your point, right, kind of.
Well, you just don't want like I had a photography business, and we loved cloudy days because then there weren't shadows on parts of your face, it was more even.
Yeah, Laura?
Yeah, I always have blue from the screen in my glasses.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a clue for how to get rid of that? No matter where I put my light, that's there.
That's there. Yeah, glasses are an issue. Anybody have a tip for that? I wish
Contacts.
So this is Caroline. What a professional person who works with media consultants say to do is, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I'm lifting my glasses so that they tilt down a little bit. And then, no, lift your earpiece up a little bit so that you've got it pointing like almost downward.
Okay.
And then that way the light reflects down and not into the screen.
Okay, I'll try it.
Probably
Sort of
also has to do with,
side of my head.
it probably also has to do with the angle of your webcam to your.
True.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think you just have to play with it.
Thank you for the technical support.
Yeah, right. We're here to help.
Who knew?
Who knew? All right. So question number 2 of the advanced question, and then we'll get into the chat box. Suggestions for how to increase my LinkedIn network if my contacts are limited, i.e. I would like to make a contact at XYZ company, but I haven't met anyone who works there. All right. So this is the power of the search bar, right? So in that search bar in the upper left-hand corner, if you do not know anybody in that organization, meaning you don't have a first level contact, pop the name of the organization into the search bar, hit enter. And what'll happen is all the people who currently work there, and actually ones who don't, will also come in as well. And so hopefully you have at least one second level connection. If you do, then you open up that person's profile, and then you'll see that you'll have at least one mutual connection. You have to have at least one in order for there to be a second level. You might have 10. If that happens, then you want to see, okay, well, how well do I know that person, that mutual connection? And then you want to reach out to them, right? And you want to ask them if they would broker an introduction. So I would write them an email offline in order to find their email address in that person's profile, meaning your first level connection. You'll see a contact info button underneath their name. Click on that. Hopefully their email address will show up. I would write them offline and say, look, I'm trying to connect in with XYZ company. Cute cat, Laura. I'm trying to connect in with XYZ company. I understand you're connected to John Smith, whoever that person is. Would you consider brokering an introduction? Or would you consider forwarding my application to John for extra consideration? Because we talk about it every single week. It is so important to get an internal champion. But LinkedIn can help you do that if you can go ahead and find somebody who's a second level. If you can't, if it's a third level connection, you can try to reach out to them. What would happen is if you have a third level connection, then when you open up the person's profile, you may not see a connect button right there. If you don't see a connect button, hit the 3 dots next to near the person's name, drop down, and then it'll say connect. And look, you can just send them a connection invitation and say, I know it's random. I mean, I can't say it'll always work, but say, hi, so-and-so. I'm applying for whatever the situation is. I'm applying for a position at your organization. Would love to make a connection with you to see if you can offer any advice, or maybe help me to get my candidacy notice, something like that. Hopefully they will accept your invitation. If they do, then you can message with them back and forth. Okay. So that would be my tip there. Corliss, did you want to give any tips around the federal government side of that in terms of networking on LinkedIn?
It's not utilized as much, but they do check it kind of after they're interested in you. So it's not nearly as important as it is in the corporate sector. What I always tell people is when you're looking for a federal job, you lead with the package first. So your resume, the application you submit, then you move on to the interview, and then they'll look at your LinkedIn. Corporate sector is almost opposite. You do all the networking first, and then everything else comes after. So it's a different process. It's totally opposite, and it's just not as important, but you definitely want to have a presence if possible. And you'll find that some people in the federal government, just because of the nature of what they do, don't have a presence, and that's just kind of the way it is. So
Corliss, help me understand this too, because I had heard in the past that that networking actually can be important in the federal government in terms of it's about who you know, and that if you connect with forget LinkedIn for a second, but just in general, if you have a relationship or have a referral into somebody and they like you, then make sure that when you apply, then when you apply through USA Jobs, then they're more likely to notice you. Could you explain how that works?
Yep, absolutely. It can help you, but it helps you after they have looked at your application and they consider you what we call minimally qualified for the position or best qualified for the position. So the package comes first, and then networking can interject itself in the middle of the process. So let's say you submit your package, you get referred to the hiring manager because your package is one of the top packages that gets submitted. You can reach out to that hiring manager at that point in time and say, hey, I'm Corliss Jackson. I submitted a package. I think you're the hiring manager for this position, because they won't tell you. And I'm interested in just sharing a little bit about my background. That would be somebody who's probably an extrovert in the process and wants to interject themselves into the process. If a hiring manager knows you exist and they want to hire you, you then have to turn around and create a package that gets the HR person's attention so that you can be identified as one of those top candidates. So it can help you in different parts of the process, but by no means at all does it constitute kind of a standalone networking is it. Networking is a layer on top of everything else that can possibly give you a boost. Really important is your package, and then how you come across in that interview.
And then one more thing, Corliss, while you have the floor. So for those who have tried to apply to USA Jobs in the past, they will notice that there's a series of questions that the USA Jobs will ask you relative to your qualifications. And it'll rank you you have to rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, what is it, outstanding or expert, and 1 being not. My understanding, please help us and clarify this, is that in order for you to be considered, you have to check 5 on everything. Is that right?
Yep. So this is called the Self-Assessment Questionnaire, and this is analysis of your skills and abilities, and it's your analysis. And I always tell my folks, market, boast, brag, do whatever you have to do to give yourself the highest possible response to that particular, to all those questions if you can. This is the time for you to give them as much as you can in terms of what you bring to the table, because they will X you out of the equation based on how you respond. So this includes your paid work experience, your unpaid work experience, internships, civic, volunteer, social, any kind of activity that you've done that relates to that question. Give yourself full and maximum credit for yourself. And that will help you get through that first hurdle. That's the very first hurdle. If you don't get through that first hurdle, you won't ever get your application looked at.
Is it true, Corliss? I had heard that if you don't check 5 on everything, you can get screened out, meaning if you check 4 or 3 on anything, it can screen you out?
Pretty close. So we don't know how the HR folks are setting that system up. They could say, you know, give me everybody who answered at the highest level for all 100 questions, except number, you know, 63. And then for that particular question, I'll take something less than superior, right? So they can actually set up the system that way, and you and I won't know what that looks like. So my recommendation is that you give yourself as much credit as you can throughout the process. You know, max it out. Think of ways to opt yourself in rather than to exclude yourself. Or what I always tell my folks, say what your mama would say about you. Give yourself that credit.
Good. Yeah, this is not the time to be shy, not the time to be overly humble about your qualifications, because
not at all.
that you just got to check the high boxes.
Yep. And one more thing, that is actually the first step in the process, and it's only a computer. This is not a person doing anything. They're not interacting with you. They're not looking at your resume. This is a screen out feature where they're going to either filter you in or filter you out. And the way you respond is the way that they're going to handle your application. So some of you will get a response back, and it's based on your answers to the self-assessment questionnaire. We have found you not qualified for this position. That means that you graded yourself too low in that part of the process. Nobody has even looked at your application to tell you that you're not qualified. It's how you told them you weren't qualified. So you actually weeded yourself out.
So Corliss, that feels like really disingenuous, because with so many questions, it seems like there would be virtually no one who would be a 5 for everything. And so
you'd be surprised.
Really?
You'd be surprised. You got to give yourself credit. If you have, I always say that they usually, you know, if you've had exposure to a particular topic, I would give yourself credit for it. And what happens is that these questions are not the questions they ask you on the interview. They're not going to ask you 100 questions on the interview. They're going to ask you a general overarching question about your communication skills, or they're going to ask you about how you deal with a certain particular topic. They're not going to ask you 100 questions in the interview. So that they won't come back to each and every question. So if you have exposure, usually it's A, B, C, D, E. A, I know nothing. B, I know a little bit. C, I'm kind of average. D, I'm above average. Or E, I'm the expert. You know, I'm the queen bee. I know everything. I would give myself E. And sometimes you just got to do it and move on. Don't think too much about it. If they don't want you, after they look at your application, they will have no problems rejecting your application. But if they do want you, but they don't know it yet, you're Xing yourself out of the equation by how you respond to the questionnaire. They're just trying to go from making a tall stack to a short stack.
So it's really not a question of trying to assess if you're an honest person.
Right.
Not at all.
That's right. So play the game.
Public service and integrity.
So you just play the game to get to the next step. Really, right?
But I didn't say be dishonest, right?
Okay.
I said, say what your mama would say about you.
Yeah, okay. Well,
but I have a question that sometimes in government work, they ask you that like you can apply related to your education and no experience, or so they give you choices, education or education and experience. So what do you recommend? Like to say I have education and experience, or just apply for education? Because one of my friends said, usually go like, okay, this is what I know. And for example, don't apply more than a grade 9, even if you qualify for grade 11. So
no, I would apply for everything that you feel you're qualified for, but education only gets you so far. So in the federal government, if you have education alone, it'll only get you so far. Above a GS 11, you have to have experience. So I always say, look at the option that has work experience and education coupled together, because your work experience could be paid, unpaid, social, civic, or your degree that you earned. So the time that you spent going through school, that can be considered experience if you write it correctly into your resume. So I always say go for both, because work experience is only, education will only get you so far. There's different levels.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you for the deep dive, Corliss. We need to have you back
Sure.
up here, talking about the government again.
Sure, sure,
Always
sure.
fun. All right. So speaking of Corliss, would you help guide us through the chat box?
Absolutely. So the first question is, where are the best places to connect to the organizations that are hiring? Is this job boards, networking? And what are resources or suggestions to prepare for round 2 interviews? So there's 2 separate questions there.
Wow. Okay, that's a mouthful. So look, so in terms of the first part of the question, and Vern, I'm going to punt to you in just a second to complement what I'm sharing. This has to do with networking, right? Because there are 2 ways to get a job. You can either submit your resume or you can show up before your resume. Submitting your resume is through a job board. Now, here's the deal, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Submitting your resume through a job board, Indeed, even the LinkedIn job board, Career Builder, trade publication, whatever, only works 10% of the time. Can I just let that hang in the air for a second? It works 10% of the time. Why? Because employers are inundated. Once the whole world went digital, X number of years ago, right? After the time that we're all old enough, I think, on this call to remember that lick the envelope, okay? Go on pretty stationery. Remember all that way, way back? Once that went away, employers in going digital started getting just deluged. And as a result, you are now competing with hundreds of other people for the same job. It doesn't feel that way to you when you look at the job. It's just me and my job description. No, it's you and the entire world that are competing. And as a result, employers feel like they have the pick of the litter and they just weed, just like Corliss was saying, weed, because they can only hire one person and they certainly cannot interview 100 people. They can't interview 50 people. Maybe they can interview a dozen people. And so going through that job board is usually not very effective. I'm not saying don't apply, but if you're going to apply, make sure that you really, really are qualified. You've really, really gone through every single line item and looked for those qualifications and looked at the industry background and customized your resume, on top of which find the internal champion. I know we talk about this a lot. It just really bears repeating because there is so much competition. That said, there is the other side of networking, and the networking is accessing the hidden job market. 80 to 90% of all jobs are hidden from the market. These are employers who are not using the job board. They're using their private network. They are tapping their friends and their colleagues and listservs and all of that and saying, hey, colleagues, who do you know that can do X, Y, Z? I'm doing that right now. I'm doing a search right now, and it's a nonprofit legal aid search. And we're just literally, I mean, I've just been canvassing. I need to know the people who know the people so we can find that pinpointed person. And so if you are in somebody else's network, you are very likely to be tapped by that person. Hey, this job isn't right for me, but it's right for you. So that's that piece of it. And Vern, do you want to, because you're the master networker here, do you want to add some more tips?
Yeah, a couple of things. Everything Shira said, as you're applying for the job, you're researching the company, you're researching the job description. Make sure that you realize that when you start to reach out to your network, you're well prepared to tell your network about the job, how your skills match up with that, so that they're well prepared to advocate or to promote you if you do find the internal champion. The last comment I'll make, just as a case study to what Shira just said, I've conducted 5 job searches in my career. The first 2 were very difficult, and the last 3 came to me through my network. I wasn't even looking for a job, and someone in my network called me and said, "There's this job," and to Shira's point, it wasn't posted, and so it was in the hidden job market, and the only way I found out about that was through my network.
You guys should be maximizing your Zoom time, maximizing Zoom coffees. If you're spending all of your time calling through the job boards, that is not going to be the best use of your time, because all that you're doing is interacting with a computer, and again, you're competing with all those people. But if you spend every single day scheduling Zoom coffees, scheduling times to meet with people with whom you have mutual synergy, because this isn't about you, this is a mutual relationship. It shouldn't be transactional. There are people in your network who want to know about you, and you need to know about them so you can help each other, right? Be a go-giver. Find your colleagues, find the people with whom you have synergies. Hey, how can we help each other? I notice we're in the same sector, or we're looking for the same kind of thing, or, you know we have a mutual contact in so-and-so. Your profile on LinkedIn looked really interesting. I'd love to schedule a 30-minute Zoom coffee with you to see how we can explore mutual synergies. You make sure to do that all the time. All of a sudden, your network keeps flowing. You know how they used to say, never have lunch alone, right? Well, never have a Zoom coffee alone. I mean, we're just in that world now where people are a little bit more open to it. So I highly recommend it. Laura?
Vern, you said something that made me, so the private or the unposted jobs,
Yeah.
when you're making calls, do you have just recommendations for how to seek those out? How you ask, how you start that conversation?
Well, I don't have a recommendation for you to, I wouldn't, do you know of any jobs out there in the hidden job market? That's not the approach. It's again, the other person knowing you. And so to Shira's point, let me go this way. At Contacts Count, our mantra is networking is about teaching and giving. You're in those Zoom coffees, you should be teaching the other person about who you are, what your skills are, what your passions are, what would be your dream job. And again, it's not in one conversation. This happens over time, but they know you well enough that when they see the opportunity, they immediately pick up the phone or email you and tell you about it. And it can't be a one-way street. It's teaching and giving. So you need to learn those same things about the other person. What are their skills? What are their expertise? What are their passions? What are some of the challenges they're having, so that at any point you might be able to help them in some way? And that's how you build those mutually beneficial relationships over time.
And to your point, Laura, in terms of the initial outreach, you want to find a point of common connection.
Yeah, like I've had several of those calls. I have a lot of those kinds of phone calls, but I think where where I fall down is like, tell me a little bit about what your dream job is, because it could be all different kinds of things for me. And so it's hard for me to, I guess I'm looking to make that an elevator speech that will not close me out of other opportunities.
Try to find, it's what I call creating, this is going to sound funny, but it'll make sense in a second. A broadly narrow brand. Broadly narrow, what does that mean? It's narrow in the sense that it has some definition, but it's broad in that it has some elasticity. Okay. So for example, I like to say you all know I have multiple practice areas. Well, one of them is recruiting, but it's not just recruiting, it's association recruiting. Now I say that because saying that I'm an association search consultant means that it's narrow, it's got some definition, but I'm not just saying trade associations or individual society membership organizations or ag associations. It's got elasticity to it, right? So it's the same thing here. If you have to have an elevator pitch, make sure that it has some sort of definition. And your definition could be, here are the problems that I solve in the world, in general, right? These are the types of problems, or this is for whom I solve them. So I solve it for this industry, mission, or sector. Or it maybe you don't have that kind of clan, right? But you have a lane, your professional lane. You're in, I don't know, you're an accountant, you're in HR, marketing, right? You're sort of, you can cross sectors. But even so, these are the problems that I help organizations solve. And if you use that as your common denominator, then depending upon who you are talking to, you would customize it for their ears. You have to think about, who are you talking to? What's going to resonate with them in terms of how they're going to be able to perceive you? Because you have to know who you're talking to. Does this person have any clue about, Laura's world of, working with, dual eligible patients and all this stuff? They may not, in which case you're going to have to not dumb it down, right? But make it in a little bit more of an easily relatable kind of a way. But if you're talking to a fellow SME, a subject matter expert, man, oh man, you can go right in there, but speak into, again, what's important to them, because they have their own network. And you know, the birds of a feather concept, people tend to hang out with people who are like them. So if you're talking to somebody who's in that part of your sector, go right into that. And if not, you want to keep it a little bit more.
Okay, and so after you have that conversation, they say, well, you should talk to so and so and so and so and so and so, and you reach out by email. Do you be as bold as to attach your resume and like your kind of your overview?
It depends.
Or do you just do a introduction email and say, could I set up a few minutes for?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. If it's just a networking situation, I would just attach your LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
So everybody has a LinkedIn URL. By the way, you want to make sure your LinkedIn URL is not the gobbledygook version. Everybody gets a gobbledygook version. It'll say linkedin.com/in/ your name and then like ABC123. Go into your profile. I'm sorry, I'm just digressing here. Go into your profile in the upper right-hand corner of your profile. Click on Edit Public Profile and URL. On the next page, it'll say Edit Public Profile, and click on the little blue pencil and take away all the gobbledygook and try to find something as close to your name as possible. So, you know, Laura-Cohen or Laura-M-Cohen, that kind of thing. But besides that, put your LinkedIn profile in, unless there's a specific job. If so-and-so is referring you, hey, I heard that there's an opening and hey, you guys need to meet, absolutely attach your resume for sure. But
and if
otherwise,
you know somebody but haven't talked to them like in a year or so and they likely don't remember you,
people remember you more than you realize. I've said this recently and I'll say it again. As long as you left the relationship on good terms, it could be 25 years. It has happened to me where all of a sudden you resurrected a relationship because whatever, you just kind of fall back into each other's lives like, hey, Laura, it's been, how are you? It's just, you pick up where you left off. A year is nothing. People remember, and people remember how they felt the last time they were with you. It could be 25 years. Don't ever worry about how long it's been since you've talked.
You have nothing to lose. You reach out, and if they, you know, if they never return your email, then they don't return your email, and then just move on.
If you're left on good terms, likely they'll be happy to hear from you. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. Yeah, right. That thing. All right, so let's.
Sure. How long before you and I talked?
Oh, well, exactly. And in fact, most of the experts on this call were like that for me. In fact, yeah, Vern and I. 10 years?
It was probably 10 years at least since we've actually had a conversation.
Yeah, and we just kind of like randomly found each other. I forget even how we reconnected. And then I'm like, hey, I'm doing this Friday morning call, Vern. Would you? He's like, sure. And so here we are seeing each other every week.
Shira and I got reconnected from someone who was on this call.
Oh, that's right.
Who got a job.
That's right.
Somebody I had worked with, and I was like, you know, helping her from a career coaching standpoint. And she said, Shira's got this group, you'd be really good on it. And so I reached out to Shira, and here I am.
And here
it's really a lot of times it's about the timing, just like you're saying. So if there's a need and you pop into the, you know, the time when that need needs to be met, then it's about timing. So
absolutely. So speaking of timing, we are like 4 minutes away from when we were supposed to. This has been a great conversation. But Corliss, do you want to go ahead and look at the chat and just maybe choose a question that you think we can kind of answer in this next, 4 or 5 minutes?
Yeah, and we'll kind of continue the conversation on networking here. What do you recommend talking about when networking with someone at a company for which there aren't any roles that you're currently interested in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll start. Maybe Vern, you want to jump in here. This is really all about providing value. In fact, I'm gonna flip it around. I'm gonna pretend, and I actually like to say this about every job seeker. I'm gonna pretend that you are your own small business. So you are officially Sandra George Inc. You are officially Jen Ebhart Inc. Okay, so think of yourself that way. And being in a small business myself, I am always talking with employers where there's necessarily no opportunity for me to help them yet. And yet my goal here is to let them know what I do offer in case there is a time when they could benefit from my services, right? And it's the same thing with you. So if you have a particular value add for them that you think that one day they could benefit from, it is your job to let them know what that is. But let me just emphasize this here. This isn't just about your interest in that organization. That's lovely that you have an interest. This is about your value. because they are not hiring you for them. They're hiring you for them. They're not hiring you for you. They're hiring you for themselves to solve their urgent business challenges. And if you have superpowers, if you have a background, if you have, again, value that you think could be really beneficial to them, you want to make sure that you are communicating that to them, because your interest only goes so far. There are lots of people who have lots of interests. I mean, I have an interest in NASA. Okay, well, but I don't think NASA would ever hire me. I don't think I could really provide much value to NASA other than, oh, wow, I love the stars, right? Like, really? So seriously, you got to think about it from their perspective. You always have to walk a mile in the hiring manager's shoes. Why would they be attracted to you? What can you do to move their needle forward? So if you're networking with people proactively and you say, look, I understand whatever it is, you have a division that does X, you know, and that's very related to my skill set and background. You have your mission, your whatever. Maybe there's a problem right now that they're trying to solve that you've researched and you figured out, hey, I've got these superpowers that I think could really advance this challenge forward. That would be how you would make an impact there. So Vern, anything you want to add to that?
Well, and so going to adding value, the type of questions you want to find out from them are, what are their challenges? What are their goals and objectives?
Right.
And listen to, here's a problem, here's our goal, here's our objective. How does your skills and your, you know, and your problem solving ability or whatever it is, do you begin to think that, wow, I could probably solve that? That's where you begin, and then you just stay in touch with them over time as much as you can.
It's a great point, Vern. It's the what's keeping you up at night question.
Yeah.
You're having a Zoom coffee with somebody and you're just trying to get to know their organization. That's exactly the kind of question. So tell me what challenges you're facing, so-and-so, your department's facing, the organization is facing. What kind of people are you hiring? What kind of talents do you need to help, you know, solutionize for your organization? Just what's keeping you up at night? That's what I do. It's what a lot of us small business people do. What's going on? And then as you have a conversation, all of a sudden, some challenge sometimes comes up like, oh my gosh, I'm the perfect person to help you with that. So thanks for that, Vern. Thanks, Vern. Okay, so we're at time, unless Kelly, Corliss, there's one other, like a quick one that we could do.
Oh, nope, we covered most of them. We didn't have a lot of questions, but I think we had some really great conversation. So
good. And before we go back into breakouts for a sec, and I'll do my PowerPoint. Noreen. So Noreen, I'm gonna take you offline here. So Noreen just started a recruiting business. Yay, Noreen. And so she is going to be a generalist in helping a lot of different companies, a lot of different roles. But Noreen, do you want to share with the folks just a little bit about what you're going to be doing and how people can get in touch with you?
Sure, thanks. I'm actually very excited. I'm starting in with the accounting and HR business to start. Clients are coming in and the jobs are coming forward. So I'm going to put my information in the chat box. But I do professional and executive level search, and looking for people that are able to connect with the problems that my clients have. So I'll give you a quick example. Yesterday, speaking with a client, they happen to be a CPA firm and they are inundated, of course, at tax time. Their mentality is that we don't want to have to keep doing this crisis hiring all the time. Help us to solve the problem of finding people that can come into the organization and want to be here during the slow time and then are ready to go for their busy tax season. That's the kind of level of solving problems that we're working at the, and those are, you know, senior hires, but it's very exciting. I will put my information in the chat box. I look forward to helping any of you that I can. Right now, again, just in the CPA and HR role, but as Shira said, I'm going to be going into a generalist capacity. So I'm happy to help anybody, and always call, not call, but send an email, and I'm happy to get back to you and help with anything I can.
Great. And Jean, I'm sure your ears are burning here, so make sure that you connect with Noreen. Yeah, right.
We have connected.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so yeah, so let's go ahead and I'll just get back into our little deck here. Give me 1 second so we can wrap everything up. All right, so if you want to stay in touch with the experts, here we are. Feel free to take a picture for those of you, oops, sorry. Yeah, so feel free to take a picture. I'll keep this up for just a second. All right. And I always like to share some other job support groups here in the area, Career Network Ministry and POAC and BANG and 40 Plus and Career Confidence. These are all of those are free job support services, just like what we have here. The only difference is that they typically have speakers. In fact, I will be speaking at 40 Plus on Monday on accessing the hidden job work, the hidden job market.
Can you go back for a second? I was slow on the camera draw. Thank you. Got it.
Okay. So I will be speaking on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern on accessing the hidden job market, which is all about the networking. So feel free to join me there. Career Gateway is the only one that has a small fee of $75, and that's for, they do like a week-long boot camp kind of a situation. If you'd like to join my bi-weekly newsletter, feel free to send me an email. And a lot of you may already be receiving it, but it might be going into your spam. I've had a lot of issues. For some reason, my URL purposefulhire.com does not play very well with Gmail. So I tend to get into people's spam all the time. So feel free to check that out. So I always like to end with a scriptural quote. And this one is, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." And I chose this one in particular because of the next slide I want to show you. I hope this is encouraging for you. It was very encouraging for me. Yesterday, I was facing a lot of pressure in my world, which actually caused some anxiety. And as for those of you who've ever experienced that, that can actually affect your heart rate, all of that. It was not a fun time for me. And I was sitting where I am right now, and I was looking up I have a beautiful window in front of me and trees and clouds and all of that. And God gave me a sign in the clouds. It's a heart, actual heart. And I just, God loves me and God loves you. And he just showed up, and I couldn't believe it. I ran outside, I grabbed a picture. As soon as I came back in, it was gone. And it was really just for me in that moment to show God that he's got my heart and he's got your heart. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. Okay, so be encouraged. And so if you want more encouragement, we do have an inspirational time after this meeting. We have a prayer call. So if you'd like to stay on afterwards, we'd love to pray with you. Okay, so we are going to go into speed networking right now. And in that networking room, you'll have 10 minutes to introduce yourself. Or at least in 2 minutes, right? But 10 minutes total to share specifically, what is your lane? What is the job that you're looking for? What is your community or your clan, right? The folks that you're trying to serve in terms of an industry or sector. What a great lead is for you. Make sure to stay in touch. And again, remember I mentioned about those Zoom calls, the Zoom coffees. Have them with each other. Really, really, this should be like a no-brainer for all of you. When you are in those chat rooms, get each other's contact information. I don't care if you don't have anything to do with what the other person does. You never know who they know. And those Zoom coffees can be just wonderful fire starters, right? Where people are like, oh yeah, 10 minutes into the conversation, I actually know somebody, where they may not have thought of it in this room, but they might be thinking of it in a Zoom coffee. Okay, so really make sure that you spend time with each other and stay in touch with our spreadsheet. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and put you back into the breakout rooms. All right, and have at it, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. All right. Hopefully that was a good time for you. Hey, so experts, Rick, Vern, Michelle, Corliss, do you want to share any notable notes, quotable quotes from your meetings?
I just, because I didn't get to say it in the bigger group, but regarding building a network, and we were talking about this, in LinkedIn under user groups, you can, if you join user groups with your skill sets, it's a great way to develop networking networks. As a recruiter, I go into those to both make relationships. If I'm looking for Oracle developers, I'll join an Oracle developer group. They have talks, chats, all kinds of stuff. And I post jobs within those user groups. So it's a great way to meet other people with your skill sets to kind of start building that network that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so that's
Great suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what you want to do, just so in case people are, when you say user groups, you mean, Rick, you mean the groups, right?
Yeah, it's under.
So if you want to find a group that's either in your lane or your sector, okay, so like the what you do or the who you do it for, what you do is go into the search bar, type it in. So let's say PMP, right, because you're a project manager, or environmental, or HR, or anything like that. You would put that in the search bar, hit enter, and then the next thing that you're going to see is a row of little buttons, and one of those buttons is groups. And you click on groups, and then anything that is related to that subject is going to come up. If there's a group, it could be a local group, a national group, an international group, and then check out all the different groups, sign up for them. And by the way, once you're in a group, it's a really great way to network anyway. Just, I mean, you then have the right, if you will, to then reach out to the members of that group and say, hey, we're part of the environmental something group. Looks like we've got some mutual synergies, things that we're mutually interested in. Would you be open to a Zoom coffee? Why not? If they're part of a group, that means they want to network. So
Yeah.
likely than not, they're gonna accept your invitation.
Yeah. To Shara's earlier point about finding commonality, by joining the group, you've already found commonality.
Exactly. That's exactly right. By the fact that you both went there,
Yes.
that says that you have some sort of mutual interest.
Yes.
So it's a really legitimate way to reach out. Thanks for that, Rick. All right. Anything else from the groups? Vern, Michelle, Corliss?
We had a good discussion, and Caroline was practicing, some of the tips on, finding internal champions. So she asked me to gently nudge our partner Rachel about a resume she sent through the other day. So I will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, Michelle is, for those of you who were not on that call a few weeks ago. So Michelle's colleague, her name is Rachel Pellegrini, and Rachel oversees the contract division at Justin Bradley, where Michelle works. And she's open to hearing from anybody because it's all she does is contract work. They've got more job openings than they can shake a stick at. They are open to hearing from you. So if you go to, so it's what her email is it R Pellegrini?
Correct. R Pellegrini at Justin.
Pellegrini, Pellegrini. Right? Could you put her email in the chat box for us?
I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great, because they've got all kinds of openings for all kinds of contract jobs for those of you who are looking for some short-term, interim kind of work.
Does anyone know about, there's a couple federal people on here, about the small business, like women-owned business contract list that you qualify for so that they can use you?
Oh, that's what do they call that? They call that, is it called SWAM? Is it small women-owned business, or an SMB? Corliss, are you familiar with this? Because I need to do that myself as being a women-owned business. Laura, connect with me offline. I think that I might have a way to get that for you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. All right. Other than that, I think we are good to go. So for those of, this will officially conclude our HMM meeting. But for those of you who would like to stay on for the prayer call, happy to have you. Otherwise, for the rest of you, look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.